Fanfic Corner, presented by Animal Girl. Secrets in the Sand, a Luxsoka story. Preface in Chapter 1. Written and read by Animal Girl. Ahsoka couldn't believe the mess that Lux had gotten them into. They were in Carlakc in the middle of a deathwatch camp. She knew that Lux was looking for revenge after Count Dooku had his mother killed, but she knew that deathwatch was dangerous. She had heard the stories from both Obi-Wan and Duchess Satine. Fortunately, deathwatch had no idea she was a Jedi. They thought she was Lux's betrothed. She paced around the tent she was sharing with Lux for the night. It was the request Lux made to keep her safe. She looked uneasily at the only bed in the tent. It would be very difficult to share without getting extremely close, something Ahsoka was forbidden to do as a Jedi. Still, she'd be lying to herself if she didn't admit that she had thought about it before. She was 16 after all. She'd also be lying to herself if she didn't admit that she was more than a little attracted to Lux. She also knew that Lux was attracted to her, and she didn't need the Force to figure it out. She heard the sound of the tent flap moving aside, and soon felt Lux's presence. She turned to look at him. "I know," Lux said. "You're mad at me. I don't need to be a Jedi to figure that out." "We have to get out of here," Ahsoka said. "Deathwatch can't be trusted." "We can't leave. The camp is too well guarded. We're stuck here, at least for tonight." Ahsoka went back to pacing around the tent. She was trying to center herself and come up with a plan to get them out of this mess. But she couldn't concentrate. Her desire for Lux was growing and distracting her, and she could sense his growing desire for her. When she looked up, she found herself standing right in front of him. They both wanted each other, and they knew it. They also knew this could be their only chance to act on their feelings. "I shouldn't be doing this," Ahsoka thought as she and Lux began to kiss and move their hands over each other's bodies. "It's forbidden, but it feels so good. And no one will know. One night, as a normal teenage girl with the boy I love, that's all I want." The ship Ahsoka, Lux, and R2 took to Carlakc sped away from the planet. Ahsoka leaned back in the pilot's chair and breathed a sigh of relief. Deathwatch wouldn't follow them. "We did it," Lux said from the co-pilot seat. "We got away from them." "We did," Ahsoka said. "It was close, though. We make a pretty good team." Lux rose and helped her out of her seat, and the two stood there looking into each other's eyes. "Come with me," Lux said. "I'm going to the Outer Rim to try and start over. And after what we shared last night, I want you to come with me, if you want to." Before Ahsoka could answer, a familiar voice came over her comlink. "Ahsoka," said Anakin, "where have you been? Are you on your way back to the temple?" She was torn. Part of her wanted to stay with Lux, but another part of her wanted to return to the temple, and she had no idea which one to choose. Suddenly she felt something through the Force, and a smile spread across her face. "I'm sorry, Master," she said into her comlink, "but I won't be coming back." She turned off her comlink just as Lux pressed his lips to hers. She knew she wasn't going to regret her choice. She loved Lux with every fiber of her being and knew that he loved her. "Lux," she said between kisses, "I have to tell you something." "What?" he asked, still kissing her. She pulled back slightly and looked into his eyes. Love radiated from him like heat from a sun. "I'm 99% sure that we're going to have a baby." 2 years later, Ahsoka woke to find the space next to her in bed empty. Lux must have already gone to his job on a nearby moisture farm. His employer, a moisture farmer named Wild Umblick, worked his hands hard for not a lot of money and only gave them 1 day off a standard week. Fortunately, Ahsoka made good money at her job, or at least enough to put food on the table, care for their children, and the occasional trip to Mos Eisley. Her employer, Annalie Carlakc, gave Ahsoka as many hours as she could while still managing to give her 2, sometimes 3, days off a week. She even let her bring her children to work with her, putting her own children from her first marriage to work, helping to keep an eye on them. Ahsoka rolled over, attempting to go back to sleep. It was her day off, and she was hoping for some more sleep. However, she had no such luck. A cry came from the next room where her children slept. Getting out of bed, she made her way to the room and picked up her crying child. "Cody," she said, "hush now, you're going to wake up your brother." The 15-month-old stopped crying and looked up at his mother. Fortunately, his twin brother Rex was still asleep. If Ahsoka was lucky, he would sleep a little while longer. Of course, she didn't count on that happening. Both Rex and Cody, named after Captain Rex and Commander Cody, had inherited her Force sensitivity and knew when their parents were up. They had also inherited her facial markings. Everything else they got from Lux. They shared his same blue-gray eyes and dark brown hair, though there were a few streaks of blue and white from Ahsoka's Laku and Montrals in their hair, as well as baby Montrals on top of their heads. And Lux insisted their eyes had more blue than gray in them. Their skin was also darker than their father's, but lighter than their mother's. However, Ahsoka and Lux had no idea if it was a combination of her skin and his, or from living under Tatooine's twin sons. The boys, identical twins, were born while Ahsoka and Lux were looking for a permanent place to live. Throughout most of Ahsoka's pregnancy, they had lived on the planet Lothal. But when Ahsoka started sensing a strong Force signature that she knew wasn't coming from her or her unborn babies, they had left when she had a little under a standard month left before she gave birth. When she had gone into labor, they were still trying to figure out where to go. With no outposts or habitable planets or moons in the area, the couple had been forced to have their children on board their ship. After recovering from the birth, Ahsoka had suggested they go to Tatooine. It was nearby, though not close enough for them to get there before the twins were born, even in hyperspace, and she knew her former master would never look for her there. He hated Tatooine. The planet held too many bad memories for him. Ahsoka carried little Cody into the kitchen, holding her child in such a way as to offset her slightly swollen belly. She was pregnant again, and only slightly over 4 months along. R2 rolled up to her as she put her baby in one of the 2 high chairs. The little astromech had made the decision to stay with Ahsoka and Lux, and had become their house droid. He looked after the house when they were gone, and helped to take care of the children. Fortunately for Lux and Ahsoka, R2 loved children. No sooner had Ahsoka given Cody a bottle of warm milk than a cry came from the nursery, indicating that Rex was awake. Ahsoka went back to the nursery, picked up her second son, took him back to the kitchen, and set him in the second high chair. When she turned around to get a second bottle of milk, she heard fussing, crying, and 2 little voices saying, "No!" When she turned around, she saw her children fighting over the bottle of milk she had given to Cody. Walking up to her children, she took the first bottle from Rex and gave it back to Cody, and gave Rex the second bottle. While her boys had their milk, she leaned against the table and laid a hand on her stomach. "Please be girls," she said to the 2 babies she was carrying. "Mommy's outnumbered 3 to 1. 4 if you count R2. R2 whistled, saying in the droid language, which Ahsoka had learned after 5 years of being around the little droid, that he would always be on her side. Smiling, Ahsoka went to one of the cabinets and got out 2 jars of baby food. After giving her sons their breakfast, she set about making her own, something she could keep down, as she was still experiencing morning sickness. Ahsoka quietly walked out of the nursery. She had just put Cody and Rex down for their afternoon nap and was looking forward to some quiet time, maybe even taking a nap herself. However, a nap was going to have to wait. She could sense someone approaching the house. Opening the door, she went outside to greet her guest. The bantha in front of her, the homestead that she and Lux had moved into when they arrived on Tatooine, shook its massive head as its rider got off its back. "Hello, Ayaknar," Ahsoka said to the Tusken Raider coming up to her home. "Would you like to come in and get out of the heat?" "I'm used to the heat," Ayaknar replied in almost perfect basic. "But I'll come in anyway. You're with child, so we don't want you getting overheated." The two friends sat down at the kitchen table, and Ahsoka poured water for both of them. Normally, Tusken Raiders, or Sand People as they were also called, wouldn't drink water collected from a moisture collector. But Ayakar attempted to be a gracious guest when visiting Ahsoka and Lux, or her other two friends from outside her tribe. "What news do you bring?" Ahsoka asked, setting down her glass. "A tribe to the west attempted to attack the farm, but my warriors chased them off before the family even knew they were coming," Ayak said. "And what about the boy?" "I kept my distance. Not to alarm his guardians. But from what I could see, he is getting big. Just slightly bigger than your two." "That's not surprising. There's only a month difference in age between them." Adnar finished her water and rose from her seat. "I must go. My tribe is waiting for my return." Ahsoka saw her friend to the door and watched her climb to her bantha and ride off. Both Ahsoka and Lux, and Obi-Wan, or Ben as he was calling himself, and Anna Lee were grateful for Yakar's help keeping an eye on the Lars homestead. Both Ahsoka and Lux's homestead and Obi-Wan and Anna Lee's house were too far away for them to check on things on a regular basis, and the four of them could be easily identified. The Ayak and her Tusken Raiders were a different story. Their territory ranged well past the Lars homestead, and it was extremely difficult to tell one Tusken Raider from another, so they would make routine checks and report back to one of the four of them. It was a big help, but Ahsoka needed to see that Luke was okay. Fortunately, she had run into Beru and Mos Eisley earlier that day, and she had invited them to dinner at the homestead, saying that Owen had something to talk about with Lux. The Lars homestead wasn't as big as Wild Urbix, but it was a decent size. However, Owen had more droids working for him than Umbric did. After dinner, the children played while the adults talked. Luke and the twins loved to play together, but didn't get to do so much. Ahsoka had a feeling that, when they got older, all three boys would go back and forth between the two homesteads. "You look exhausted, Lux," Beru said as she served dessert and refilled everyone's glass. "Overworked," Lux answered. "Umbric works us hard, and the pay isn't enough. But at least I have a job." Ahsoka said there are some people who come to the store who haven't worked since the war started. "At least tomorrow's my day off." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Owen said. "How would you like to come work here? I need a new hand. More pay, fewer hours. I can even give you 2 to 3 days off a standard week, and you can bring the boys with you on the days that Ahsoka can't bring them to her job or has a lot to do." Ahsoka and Lux looked at each other. If Lux took this job, he could be home more, which would be a blessing when the new babies came. He would also be at the Lars homestead almost every day, which meant he could keep an eye out for trouble. It was the perfect solution. 2 days later, Ahsoka carefully arranged things behind the counter so they would be in easy reach and she would be able to find them quickly. Normally, she worked out in the garage or with the animals. But after telling Annalie that she was pregnant, she had been moved inside the store where it was not only cooler, but the work was a lot more easier. Lily Pace set several boxes on the counter. "Can you see that these are shipped out by the day after tomorrow?" she asked. "I'll let Annalie know," Ahsoka said. She picked up the 3 top boxes and moved them behind the counter. But when she went to move the 4th and biggest of the boxes, someone else picked it up first. "I got it, Ahsoka," said Jeb, Annalie's son. Ever since learning that Ahsoka's pregnant, Jeb and his sister Kaylee had been helping her out at work with the more difficult jobs. As Jeb carried the box over to the others, Ahsoka rested her hand on her stomach. Through the Force, she could feel the babies she was expecting, but she still couldn't sense if they were girls or boys. All she knew was that she definitely wasn't carrying one of each. "The way you're carrying," Annalie said from behind her, "you're expecting a pair of girls." Ahsoka turned and smiled at her boss and friend. "I hope you're right. I'm outnumbered at home. Hopefully we'll know in a few weeks. I was about 6 months pregnant when I knew Rex and Cody were going to be boys." Annalie knew what Ahsoka meant by that because she knew that Ahsoka was Force sensitive. But she kept it a secret, just like she kept the fact that Obi-Wan was also Force sensitive a secret. "You seem preoccupied today." "Just a little nervous. Lux started his new job today, and I guess I'm a little anxious." "Well, working for Owen has got to be a million times better than working for Wiley." "I know, and he'll be able to keep an eye on things without raising suspicion." "I won't lie. I was a little worried when Ayark told me about the other tribe." "Well, I have some news that shouldn't cause any worries." Ahsoka looked at Annalie and realized she was glowing. "You're not." "I am. Ben and I are going to have a baby." Annalie and Obi-Wan had fallen in love not long after they first met, nearly a month before Ahsoka and Lux moved to Tatooine, and Ahsoka had come to work at Daenerys' claim. And after he helped her save her business and not get caught up in the scandal her first husband's business partner had caused, the two had gotten married. Though Annalie and her children knew his real name, they called him Ben when in public, since basically everyone else on Tatooine knew him by that name. Though Kaylee and Jeb had started calling him Dad more than anything else. Things were starting to look up. There were multiple eyes keeping a discreet watch over Luke to see that no harm came his way, aside from the kind that every boy gets into, and 3 new babies with possible Force sensitivity to help rebuild the Jedi Order when the time came were on the way. If only they had known that something dark and dangerous was on its way to their little planet in the Outer Rim. Okay, 2 things before I sign off. First off, if I stumbled over any names, I apologize. Star Wars names are extremely difficult to pronounce if you don't hear them very often. Also, Chapter 1 introduced some characters that aren't from the movies or the TV shows, at least as far as I know. Keep in mind that Annalie Carwell, Kala Carwell, Jeb Carwell, Wyatt Umbrook, Ayar, and Lee Pace, they're not my characters. They actually are from the John Jackson Miller book, Star Wars Legends Kenobi, which is about Obi-Wan's life when he first came to Tatooine, following the events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. If you're a fan of Obi-Wan or you just love reading Star Wars books, I recommend you checking it out. I also have a review video on it for my book talk videos. Please note, though, that I did take some poetic licensing with 3 of the characters. Okay, now before I sign off, one last thing I'd also like to touch on, and that is that if you have a fanfic you would like me to do a reading on for Fanfic Corners, you can feel free to submit it. Just please send it to me at either my Tumblr account or my Facebook page. I will have the link to both of them in the description section. Couple of rules when submitting your fanfics, though. First off, please be sure to include your name. I will not read any fanfic if I can't credit the author. Also, please note that if it's long, I will be dividing it up into videos. My camcorder only records videos up to 33 minutes long, so it will cut off. So if it is longer than that, I will have to cut it down into videos, just like I do with mine. Number 3, keep it clean. I'll clean up or gloss over any words and or parts that I deem inappropriate. However, if there's way too much, I won't do a reading of it. Lastly, please be honest. If I learn that someone has submitted a fanfic that does not belong to them and they didn't have the author's approval, I will not only remove that fanfic from my channel, but I will also not accept any fanfics from that sender. Okay, so those are my rules. Again, the link for my Tumblr and Facebook page will be in the description section.